Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Gabriel Hilty.
And I'm Sabah Iqbal. Here are some of the stories we are following from On the Record News.
An earthquake felt in the GTA, ongoing protests by the Iranian community, plus a potential opening date for the Eglinton LRT.
More than 2,000 residents across southern Ontario felt the ground shake Tuesday night after a magnitude 3.7 earthquake was recorded near Aurelia. The tremor was felt as far south as Toronto, Kitchener, and St. Catharines, with no reports of injuries or damage expected. Earthquakes Canada says the quake struck just before 11 p.m., about 100 kilometers north of Toronto. Social media quickly filled with reactions, whereby residents calling the quake another challenge after the recent extreme winter weather.
Speaking of that winter weather, Toronto continues to dig out from a record snowfall that saw more than 55 centimeters on Sunday. Mayor Olivia Chow announced at a Tuesday press conference the city is now moving from plowing to the second phase of its response, snow removal. Workers and trucks today started to clear snow citywide after beginning yesterday around hospitals. Chow announced the city now has 6 sites to dump and melt snow, an increase in capacity from last year. She acknowledged that sidewalks with snow can pose a barrier, especially to those with limited mobility. People can call 311 to request extra help from city staff.
Members of the Iranian community in Toronto continue to protest against government crackdowns, internet restrictions, and the silencing of protesters in Iran. OTR reporter Manroop Aulakh was at one of these protests last week.
Thousands of miles away from their home country, members of the Iranian community in the GTA say their connection to Iran remains deeply personal as protests continue back home. Behind me, protesters have gathered outside the U.S. consulate in Toronto, and they're calling for international action for the protests and the things that are going on in Iran. Protests in Iran erupted a month ago following increased inflation that later led to rallying against the clerical leadership under Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei for ongoing human rights violations. As a result, the Iranian authorities have cut off internet for the past 2 weeks, leaving many of the protesters here unable to contact loved ones back home.
It's very challenging for me. It's really hard to be focused on everything because I cannot even know if my family are safe at this moment. So I'm just trying hard to be focused and also try hard to be the voice of people in Iran.
Demonstrators gathered here hoping their voices are heard and that leaders of the world will take action.
We're hopeful that President Trump would help Iranian people with military actions because, as you know, people are risking their lives in the streets, and Islamic Republic is actually doing massacre, killing all the people.
While protesters accuse the Iranian government of committing crimes, the Iranian authorities denied the claims, reiterating most killings by the U.S., Israel, and their allies. International pressure, says Iranian affairs journalist Shanaz Karmali, is required, and Western governments have a role to play. But she warns their credibility depends on how they address human rights at home.
I think it's helpful if Western governments call out human rights abuses, but I think they in other countries, but they have to recognize 2 things when doing that. One is that when they do it, they have to be very cognizant of the fact that they could be exhibiting double standards, because if you're not like a genuine human rights leader or champion in your own country.
Protesters in Toronto say they are determined to continue rallying until they see meaningful action, even as voices inside Iran remain silenced. Reporting for OTR News, I'm Manroop Aulakh.
More outside the U.S. consulate this week, Torontonians gathered Tuesday night to lay flowers, candles, and signs for Alex Preddy, the man who was shot dead by ICE agents in the U.S. on January 24th. Organizer Camilla Jamal told Toronto Today the vigil was spontaneously organized after people online asked about memorial events in Toronto. 37-year-old Preddy is the second person killed by ICE in Minnesota in recent weeks, amidst the aggressive operations led by the Trump administration. Backlash against the agency is growing, including here in Ontario, where Brampton-based company Rochelle recently sold 20 military vehicles to ICE.
TTC riders could soon get some long-awaited relief. The Eglinton Crosstown LRT is now expected to open on February 8. Ontario Premier Doug Ford seemingly confirmed the date Monday, saying he was advised by the TTC after years of construction delays. There is still uncertainty, though TTC CEO Manroop Aulakh wouldn't commit to the early February date at an event on Tuesday. The project has taken nearly 20 years of planning and building and has faced criticism over delays and a cost $1 billion over budget. Premier Ford says the line has been thoroughly tested and will finally open to the public, a big step forward for Toronto Transit.
From Toronto's transit struggles to Canadian talent making more positive headlines in entertainment, OTR reporter Miguel Mabalay has a look at what is making entertainment news this week, including an Olympic appearance and homegrown talent heading to the Oscars.
A popular Canadian hockey drama is making its way beyond the screen. On Sunday, heated rivalry stars Hudson Williams and Connor Story carried the Olympic flame as torchbearers in the Milano Cortina 2026 torch relay. The pair took part in the relay's 49th leg through Feltre, Italy, walking with the flame and waving to cheering crowds along the route. Canadian actor, director, screenwriter, and producer Jacob Tierney created Heated Rivalry in 2025. The show has gained a loyal audience for putting a queer love story at the center of a professional hockey setting, something that is rarely seen in sports television. Another Canadian hockey series is also getting attention this week. Shoresy has officially been renewed for a 6th season. In 2021, Jared Keeso created the show as a spin-off from Letterkenny and filmed it in Sudbury, Ontario. Since its debut, the series has become a fan favorite across Canada. In film news, several Canadians are heading to the Academy Awards on March 15th. Oscar nominations were announced last Thursday. For Best Animated Short, Montreal animators Chris Lavis and Maciej Trabowski earned a nomination for their Canadian National Film Board stop motion film, The Girl Who Cried Pearl. Montreal filmmaker Alison McAlpine is also nominated for Best Documentary Short for their film Perfectly Estrangedness. Toronto's very own Maggie Kang is nominated as the writer and co-director of K-pop Demon Hunters, which is up for Best Animated Feature, and the film also picked up a nomination for Best Original Song for Golden. Toronto's Domi Shi is also nominated in Best Animated Feature as the co-writer and co-director of Elio. Canadians are also represented behind the scenes for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. The film's nominated teams include makeup and hairstyling nominees Mike Hill, Jordan Samuel, and Cleona Fury, plus production design nominees Tamara Deverell and Shane Vo. Canadian producer Jay Malsdale is also among the nominees through Frankenstein's Best Picture nomination. That's all for entertainment. For On the Record News, I'm Miguel Mabalay.
Now from entertainment to sports, here is what's happening. The TMU Bowl hosted its winter homecoming games this past Friday night at the Mattamy Athletic Center. It was the first time volleyball has been chosen as a sport to welcome students back for the semester. Jaden Whitelaw was at the MAC and has the story.
TMU's winter homecoming did not disappoint as the women's and men's volleyball teams went to battle against the Waterloo Warriors. It was the first ever volleyball HOCO at TMU, and students think it's about time the sport gets some recognition on a larger scale.
I feel like volleyball is a very entertaining sport, in my opinion. It's one of the more entertaining sports. So I'm surprised it's not like the NBA or like NHL or anything like that. Yeah.
It's high pace, high intense. No one who I would know wouldn't like it, I guarantee you.
Those who made the trip to the MAC Friday night did not leave empty-handed.
Fans who showed up early for the game were able to get some free merch, including a towel and a toque.
The women's team was in a battle from start to finish, but just fell short, losing 3 sets to 1. They didn't leave without providing some highlight plays. It was now time for the men's game, but the bowl did not want fans to be left hungry.
Taking inspiration from the Toronto Blue Jays, fans were able to buy hot dogs for just $1 today.
On to the men's game now, and we got to experience a classic. TMU had their backs against the wall, down 2-1, but did not give up. A nail-biting fourth period was the turning point for the Bold. TMU went on to claim the victory to cap off an incredible game. Whether you were there to enjoy the volleyball, the free merch, or the Looney Dogs, everyone left the map with something to remember and even a new favorite sport. Reporting for On The Record News, I'm Jaden Whitelaw.
Thanks, Jaden, for that look at the start of TMU sports for the winter. Now we're looking ahead to Super Bowl 60 and upcoming TMU Bold games. Aisha Shabeese has more.
It's been a busy time in sports as the matchup for Super Bowl 60 is finally set. The New England Patriots will face the Seattle Seahawks as both teams clinch their spots following this past weekend's AFC and NFC championships. This is the first time since 2015 and the Tom Brady era that these two teams will be going head-to-head for the Vince Lombardi Trophy. The Super Bowl will be played at Levi Stadium, home of the San Francisco 49ers, in Santa Clara, California on February 8th, bringing the long NFL season to its close. And don't forget your dance shoes, as Bad Bunny is the Super Bowl halftime show performer. In Toronto sports news, the Toronto Scepters are taking the ice tonight against the Montreal Victoire. This is the PWHL's final game before the 2-week-long Olympic break. The Scepters currently sit 6th in the PWHL standings with a 4-7 record. Will they improve that? Find out as puck drop is set for 6:30. In TMU sports, a lot is happening this Friday with several TMU Bold teams in action. So listen up. Both the men's and women's basketball teams continue their regular season play as they host Queen's University at the Mattamy Athletic Center. The games go back-to-back with the women's tipping off at 6 p.m. followed by the men's at 8 p.m. On the ice, the men's hockey team begin their 3-game road trip against the University of Waterloo at 7 p.m., while the women's hockey team is hoping to redeem themselves after a 2-game losing streak. They host the University of Windsor at the MAC at 6:15. And in volleyball, both the men's and women's teams are on the road in Guelph, facing the Guelph Griffins in back-to-back matches at 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. That's all for sports. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Aisha. Now let's have a look at the other stories we are working on today and this week in our On The Record newsroom. Moyo Lawuyi is standing by live. Moyo, what have you got for us?
Thanks, Saba. Starting with an update from the TMSU by-elections. TMU still does not have a student government despite voters heading to the polls in by-election last fall. In a mass email, the Students' Union announced on January 20th that all executive ballots were deemed null and void due to allegations of voter interference. This latest announcement follows TMSU's history of mismanagement of funds and election complaints. OTR reporter Julia Sawicki spoke with TMU's president Mohammed Lakemi to hear his thoughts on the TMSU investigation, to know who exactly is in charge of this investigation since there are no executives on the board, and to find out what the stool is doing to protect students from this campus. Expect this story on our website this Thursday. Over at the Student Campus Center, there have been new changes in TMU's multi-faith room. Students complained that prayer mats were removed and that the building staff were positioned in front of the door after the winter break, but the university says it isn't involved. More on that with Yusuf Zaidi on the website later this week. Here in the On The Record newsroom, we are preparing for the upcoming municipal elections on October 26th. Season 8 of our podcast aims to help students understand local politics. Last week, Aisha and I spoke to City Councillor Josh Matlow and Chris Moyes to break down how power works at the municipal level. We also spoke to TMU students about how well they understood the roles of their city councillors. Next week, our hosts, Julia Petrucci and Saba Iqbal, will take a deep dive into the city's budgets, helping you understand how the local government spends your taxes. Make sure you listen to our first podcast episode and the upcoming one, out next week on Friday. You can also check out our websites on therecordnews.com for any news stories. Back to you in the studio, Gabriel.
Thank you, Moyo. I don't know about you, but I was definitely cold coming into the studio today. Let's check in with Mia Di Panfilo for the weather and to see how the winter continues.
If you're planning on stepping outside anytime soon, make sure that you're bundled up well because this winter weather is making itself very comfortable across southern Ontario. Temperatures are locked into a deep freeze this week and unfortunately not going anywhere. We are looking at cold days ahead with Peterborough dropping to a -8. Heading south and west, it even gets chillier with both Barrie and Newmarket at a -10, while Oshawa and Toronto sit right around -9 with a sharp bite in the air. St. Catharines isn't getting much of a break either, also at -9, offering very little relief. Across the GTA, it's consistently cold, and Brampton and Mississauga both hitting -10. The good news is there's no snowfall expected in the GTA, which should make leaving the house that much easier. But the bad news, these temps are assumed to drop a lot lower. So hats, gloves, scarves are all non-negotiable this week. Now, onto our weekly forecasts. Starting with Wednesday, we're looking at a daytime high of -9, with temperatures falling to -13 overnight. A bit more manageable, however, once we reach the second half of the week, conditions take a sharp turn. You could see an extreme drop in temperatures, with Thursday going as low as -22 and Friday, which is shaping up to be the coldest week, with overnight lows reaching a brutal -24. This forecast may be subject to change, but as of now, winter is firmly in control. I'm Mia Di Panfilo, and that's the latest on this week's deep freeze. Stay warm, stay safe, and back to you.
Thanks, Mia. That's all for On the Record this January 28th. I'm Sabah Iqbal.
And I'm Gabrielle Hilty. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to our first broadcast of this semester. OTR is back next week with a new podcast episode on municipal politics, and our broadcast returns in 2 weeks.